You look good, man.
Thank you so much. So do you.
Yeah, it's good. I've enjoyed being out in California. We're here at Windmark Studios, down in Santa Monica. I think this studio, this was a suggestion from you or your camp. Have you recorded here?
Yeah, we were in here yesterday and the day before.
Wow.
It's
Doing what?
actually a real studio.
What were you doing in here?
I'm writing some new things.
Some new things.
Yeah.
Not for Coldplay though.
Well, maybe. Sometimes, as kind of a busman's holiday, I like to try and pretend to be Rihanna, and so sometimes I just come and try and write Rihanna
Just
songs.
on your own. She's not even in the vicinity.
She was not in the vicinity, no.
No.
I don't think she even knows that I did it. It's to be an exclusive, they may not even get to her.
Do you get asked a lot by people to contribute words and melodies because you have such a strong sense of that, and people are always looking for talented writers, you know?
From time to time. I think the reason I particularly am drawn to her is because her voice is so perfect, and it's so different to me that it's like going outside of yourself but still doing the thing I love to do.
But every time that you've written a song, I think that has either been the intention's been to give it to somebody, or in fact it has gone to someone, whether it's Embrace or Johnny Cash, which is both sides of that coin, or Rihanna, who you have collaborated with, on your music. You do have an ability to be able to kind of put yourself in their music somewhat. It's an adaptable process. It sounds like you, but I think you obviously enjoy kind of the fantasy of writing for someone else.
Yes, well, it is often a fantasy because, and case in point, one of the things we came up with yesterday we'll keep. So sometimes it's like there's a liberation from thinking from someone else's viewpoint, where I can say things that I might not say, but then we end up keeping that song. That happened with that song Paradise.
Yeah.
And it's happened a few times.
The intention of Paradise was to write for someone else, and then it ended up being a Coldplay song. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Was
that one for Rihanna, and then that's why you kind of brought her into the song?
No, that was actually came from being asked about the X Factor.
Right.
Winner's song.
Wow.
So then I played it to Will, our drummer, and he said, "No, we'll have that." And if Will ever says that, then I would listen.
Yeah. Will seems to have that role to play in the band, apart from being, as we've established many times before, most improved every record, except on this one. Very little of Will in this record. No? He does have that kind of honesty gene, doesn't he? He seems to be very straight.
Well, the more that time goes on, the more I appreciate the chemistry of our group, the four of us, and then Phil, our secret creative boss, because it becomes apparent what everyone's strengths are, and Will's is really kind of an anchoring. When I think of him, I think of something very heavy and granite-like, in a great way, like the base of a statue, if you see what I mean.
Yeah. And
without that, the thing topples. And so, while sometimes we can fall out over, he would sometimes like a darker sound, and I'm more like, let's make it more like Blurred Lines. Ultimately, that chemistry is what keeps us together.
So if we're talking about the chemistry of the band, and we've never spoken about this, and I suppose, almost 15 years on from your first record, it's a good time to talk about that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Johnny. I mean, what have you learned about Johnny in relation to the band and this chemistry?
Well, Johnny is really so sweet, and I'd say he and Phil are the sort of antidotes to any trouble that might arise between the rest of us. Johnny's only lost his temper with me once, which is really incredible.
Can you tell us what it was about?
All I remember that this was about 2004. He said, "I'm sick of your shit." That was the only time ever in the long time that we've been best friends, and he has just this peaceful thing, and then quietly he always writes the best bits of the song. Whenever he still has the ability to really elevate a song and make me think, wow, I wouldn't have thought of that riff there.
As a guitar player, I think all great guitar players who work with great singers, in particular that dynamic, they are able to support the emotional resonance of a song in a way. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They can wrap you up when you're vulnerable, or they can charge alongside you when you're leading someone into battle, you know, fall on the floor. It's so important, isn't it? And on this record, which we will talk about in depth because I love it, Ghost Stories.
Thanks.
It does feel like he's the whole band feel like they're kind of hugging you in a way and surrounding you, supporting you.
You're going to make me cry. That's kind of we're very, very tight at the moment. I know that I'm the one that is the front man and the one that's on the magazines and stuff, but of everything we've been blessed with, what we constantly come back to is this relationship, because none of us are prodigies or virtuosos, and we've seen lots of bands come and go in the time that we've been around, and we've seen the ones that have lasted, and we've worked really hard to communicate with each other in a way that brings the best out of everybody, and that started when we started working with Brian Eno. He would say you really have to respect the chemistry between you, and I don't know if we ever told you, there was a time when he kicked me out of the band for a few weeks to get everybody else's confidence up, because at that time I could be quite strong-minded in telling it has to sound like this.
Wow.
And so he taught us a bit more flexibility and let everyone get to the end of their idea before any judgment is passed.
Amazing. I mean, for someone, and don't worry, Guy, we will get to you. I'm desperate to know what Chris thinks of you as well. But for you to be in a band as one quarter of this unit, to be told by someone with the experience and wisdom, and I suppose your respect, like Brian Eno, to say you need to step aside. How did that make you feel at the time?
Well, I was pleased. This was after our third album, X and Y, where we lost our way a little bit. Phil wasn't around, he was sick, and I was, famous in like tabloid stuff, and we were coming off the back of a Rush of Blood to the Head. It was just our record company was all over the place. It was all like share prices, and it was a very wonderful, learning period. But at the time, it was chaos.
Yeah.
And so when Brian came in, I was so grateful, because it felt like we had a teacher. I was not aware that you could keep learning after college finished, before I met him, and now that's all we care about, is what can we learn next, how can we improve, how can we as people and as musicians. But so when he came in, it was like, oh, thank you. It was like a father figure coming in and saying, you're a very talented band, but here's how we should rearrange the furniture.
It's understandable in a way that someone of your age at that time would feel like, well, what is there left to learn? I've released my debut album, Parachutes. It's been received with this huge level of critical acclaim and success. Rush of Blood to the Head was a huge, enormous global success. I mean, that kind of, that speed at which that happens can throw you off your feet, can't it?
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I wouldn't change a single thing, but I'm so glad that at a certain point, and we were also having all the regular troubles that you read about in bands' biographies. We were having all of that, and
too early for a behind the music special, man.
But it is too early, and also we don't think that talking about that stuff is very glamorous. So, but all of that stuff was going on, and that's when we bought our own little place and really tried to reconnect as friends. And we had the guidance of Brian, and then this guy Marcus Dravs as well, and then Phil came back in glorious Technicolor again, and
you survived it.
Every album since then we've been kind of getting closer and closer, and everyone's role within the band is becoming more respected by the others.
So what is it about Guy?
Well, Guy is the sort of hi-fi. For example, on Ghost Stories, he's the one that really saw all the mixes home and the mastering with Spike Stent, and
Guy,
he really cares about the detail of and so for a long time I've been begging the band, please could someone else start a song, because I've been given that gift from the universe or from God or whatever you want to believe in, that ideas for songs get sent to me through wherever they get sent from. And then I take them to the rest of the band, and then we layer it up, and that's how we do it. And for a long time I've been saying, Guy, I know that you write music sometimes on your own. Please, is there any way that you would, give us some of it? He's like, no, you won't like it. And then one day last February, he very quietly came over to me in our studio and said, "Oh, Chris, we did this jam yesterday that I think you should listen to." And he did, and it was the beginning of that song Magic that we just put out.
Yeah.
And then the lyrics and everything just came. I was so grateful, and it made me so happy, and that was kind of a symbol of the album as a whole, of like, we'll help each other out here.
That was the first point that the record began?
No, there were lots of songs,
yeah.
but that was the first point where I felt like, okay, everyone is invested in this.
Yes.
Everyone knows what we're trying to do, which is go a bit more personal and a bit smaller, and
yeah. Well,
and they came to me with that, and that's when I felt like, okay, we're on exactly the same page. Because if they come in with like a big prod rock 9-minute bass solo, I would have been like, that's
can
not
you imagine
really
after you'd begged them for songs, if you had to turn around and go,
yeah,
and that's not going to work.
I don't know if they'll ever come in with song. I think they're shy about that, but and also the way we work, it's a fun way to work, and I'm always amazingly surprised and reinvigorated about a song when Guy puts his part on and Johnny and Will. It improves each step of the way, and that's why we share all our writing credits, because each part is so valuable.
Oh, I love that, as well. For those people that are watching this right now, it's very important in music that musicians get paid, which is harder and harder these days because music has become a free currency for most people. You can't tell a kid to pay for it now. They just won't understand. They'll be like, what? So when you break up your publishing and how you do that, it can become difficult if artists or bands decide to do that according to who did what lyric and what line, what musical note. And I always think that the greatest stories, and there are cases like yourself, like Coldplay, where you do go in with this equal approach.
It's basically quiz 40 20 20 20. That's how we do it.
Amazing.
I don't know if we ever told anyone that, but that's how we do it. Everything else is 25 25 25 25.
Yeah, amazing. Let's talk about this amazing record, Ghost Stories, which to me kind of is encapsulated by everything we've talked about already, which is, the chemistry of the band coming together as we've established, the support which you need on a record like this, with the subject matter. It feels like it's a companion piece in terms of the nature of it with parachutes, so it kind of feels like it's kind of could be sonically a bit of an extension, but modern, with what you've learned with Brian and Marcus and John and all these amazing collaborators. And for me, when I pressed play on this, it felt like this was a journey that began at the start of Viva La Vida, when John Hopkins first stepped into the camp and gave you a sense of ambience, that there's beauty in that you can create drama, you don't just have to start.
No,